welcome back to The Living Jesus. It's an honor to be here with you today. My name is Tiffany, and this is my special guest today. This is Kevin.
Peace be upon you.
It's nice to be here with you today, Kevin. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
We have a cool topic to talk about today.
Yes.
It's a very timely topic.
Definitely.
And it sort of begins with a question, and that question is, what is religion really? Religion, if you think about it and you boil it down to very simple, things, religion, it's really the story of a man first and foremost, and a mission and a message.
Yes.
So this is what religion is really composed of. These are the essential elements. And when you think about it, all religions, they sort of form in a similar way. When a messenger comes forward from God, a true messenger from God, and people begin to believe in what it is that he is preaching and calling towards, he forms a community of believers around him. And society at large sort of looks at these people in a certain way. They look down upon them. They mock them. They appear strange. They're doing something different.
This is like the archetypal story of how the religions began, at least in the sense of, the religions that we know today as Judaism, Christianity, Islam. It seems that all of them began in a very similar fashion, with a man coming and claiming, "Hey, I am sent by God. I have a mission. You need to obey me because God is the one who is inspiring me." Yeah. So now you have to, if you want to obey God, you have to obey me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that's seen as very controversial. And I think when we're reading these stories in the books, we're not really putting it into a modern context, right? So we don't think about what it would look like in our modern world. We think of it as history.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you take a look at Jesus and his disciples as an example, they were absolutely not a part of the mainstream. Although Christianity is now the largest religion in the world, it wasn't the case back when it first began. Actually, they were an extremely small minority. And they were seen by their peers as like a sect that branched off of Judaism, and they were seen as a heretical sect.
No, and a very dangerous one, right? Because we have, for example, the scene of the execution of Stephen in the New Testament, right? In the book of Acts. What happens there is that he gives a speech, and then what do the people say? What do the rabbis or the people who are accusing him of being, part of this new heretical sect is that they are saying he never stops preaching against our...
we actually have that verse. Okay. We can actually pull it up. It's in Acts chapter 6. Then they secretly persuaded some men to say, "We have heard Stephen speak blasphemous words against Moses and against God." So they stirred up the people and the elders and the teachers of the law. They seized Stephen and brought him before the Sanhedrin. They produced false witnesses who testified, "This fellow never stopped speaking against the holy place and against the law." So they not only did they accuse him, but they actually slandered and defamed him because they produced false witnesses in order to accuse him of blasphemy.
And what are they saying? They're saying that he's speaking against the holy place and he's speaking against the law. So it is very interesting because it reminds me of something that Professor Holyfall said the other day when we interviewed her. She said, look, all religious movements start in opposition to something. Like the opposition to society doesn't have to be violent or extreme, but it is an opposition to society. And there is something that also I was just reading today, that there is an article that I was reading today by Susan Palmer, where she said, it is inevitable that just because of the fact that religion exists, and there is this component of, for example, mystical exploration. You have these gurus or these people in India meditating, and you have all these even the scholars in Christianity and Islam and Judaism. They are reflecting all day. You have these people who are reflecting all day on the scriptures. At some point, some of them will come with an interesting new idea.
Yeah.
They will share it with a group of people that they want to share it with, and maybe this idea takes root in their minds, right? But this new idea is obviously something that people in their context have never seen before. right? So it is an opposition to an established belief.
Yeah.
So every single movement that appears, every single sect of any new religion, any new religious movement, as a whole, it will always come with a new idea that is being preached. And of course, because it is a new idea that is being preached, there's going to be some people who are going to deem this idea as something dangerous, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we see that in the evolution of the Abrahamic faiths, right? So we've talked about this many times on our channel, and people who are familiar with our belief system, they know that we have traced the evolution of the Abrahamic religions from the time of Adam until the present day, and that came in a series of covenants, right? So there have been seven covenants between God and mankind. And each time a messenger came forward with a new covenant, we saw the religion evolving and changing and shifting. And with it came a new jurisprudence, with it came new knowledge and new understanding. So each time the messengers who came with that new covenant and that shift of the religion, they were met with a lot of opposition. And they were called heretics, like Jesus and his followers were labeled as such in their time.
Yes, blasphemers, right? Why? Because their understanding of the law and their understanding of how the religion should work was not conforming to the presuppositions that the society of their time had. But actually, I was thinking that really, if you see the Bible, it is like a collection of sayings and writings of people who were very against the understanding of their society. You read the Old Testament and you see Jeremiah fighting against the people because the people didn't understand the law like God wanted them to understand. You have Isaiah, he's fighting against the people. You have Amos, he's fighting against the people. You see every single time the prophet came.
The prophet is usually sort of in opposition to the majority of the people because they're in misunderstanding of what it is that God has commanded, and they've forgotten what the true message of God.
Exactly. So of course, like you have at some point, for example, John the Baptist, right? Where he is his understanding of the religion is so vastly different than the understanding of the society that he is in, that Jews altogether see him as a different religion.
Yeah, he's not universally accepted by the Jewish people even today as a prophet sent by God. They had stopped at Prophet Malachi, so actually John the Baptist is seen as sort of a deviant from the religion of Judaism.
Exactly. So this is a new religion, right? So John the Baptist in his time, of course, if they were using the labels that they are using today, he would be labeled as a cult leader.
And there were people who were loyal to John the Baptist, and they actually stayed upon the religion of John the Baptist, and they never followed Jesus. Right? And this religion still exists. It's the Mandaean religion.
Exactly.
So, I mean, definitely, if you applied the same terminology onto people, of history that we use today, they certainly would have fallen into that label of a so-called cult.
And Jesus and his movement, in the eyes of the Mandean, these original Mandean people, of course, Jesus is a cult leader, right?
Yeah. So absolutely. So we see that it becomes a bit confusing when we go back and we try and analyze religion and the history of religion.
Yes.
And even if you put some of the practices that are in place today by what is seen as established religions and you put them under a microscope, it might appear very strange. When you take the label that people are comfortable with away from it. And there was an article that was published relatively recently by a man named Massimo Intervine, and he's an interesting person. He's an Italian sociologist, author, and a intellectual property attorney. And he's actually a founder of an organization called CESNER, which is the Center for Studies on New Religions.
Yes.
And he published an article on the website Bitter Winter. And I just want to read a little quote from it. Alarming accounts have emerged about a dangerous cult. Its leader claims he is always right when he imparts teachings about theology or moral behavior, and dissent would lead to expulsion. Some of the cult's beliefs are strange, if not ridiculous. Devotees even gather to eat what they claim are bodily parts of the long-deceased founder. Many of them believe that the ghost of the founder's mother appears to children. Some female believers live in communities where they are allowed to communicate with non-believers only rarely and through a grill that prevents visitors from fully seeing them. Before I continue, I should make the shocking confession that I am a member of that cult. It is called the Roman Catholic Church. Its theology teaches that the Pope is infallible when speaking authoritatively about faith and morals. Those who question the dogma of infallibility risk excommunication. During the Mass, we believe that we eat the body and drink the blood of Jesus, not symbolically or metaphorically, but really, although mysteriously. Most Catholics, including the Pope, believe in the reality of apparitions of the Virgin Mary to young children in places such as Lourdes or Fatima. I had 2 aunts who were cloistered Benedictine nuns. Relatives were rarely allowed to visit them, and they were barely visible behind their grill. So I found this to be a very poignant way of making this point, which is that if you hold what people are comfortable with, like established religions such as Roman Catholicism, which is very widely practiced, the largest denomination within Christianity, if you hold them up to the same set of standards, then even these what we deem as true religions or established religions would sort of have to be classified with this label of a so-called cult.
Yes, I mean, it is. I think what's happening here is that Massimo is pointing out that pretty much every religion has weird things. Weird, but weird according to whom, right?
When you take certain practices and certain beliefs out of context, and you don't, apply the theological significance to it, and you don't talk about the meaning and the teaching behind it, but you just, you make headlines, you make certain things sound very strange, then it will sound strange because to the uneducated mind, this doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yes, it all has to do with how you frame it, right?
Exactly.
Because frame it under the narrative of religion, of course, every single thing makes sense, right? Like Roman Catholics, they could argue with theological and historical arguments how everything that they do actually traces back to the time of Jesus and the time of the apostles, and it is everything that they have always believed, for example, right? So, but if you take out the fact of what they are doing from the narrative of the religion, of course, you can make anything sound like anything you want.
Holly Folk, she talked about this concept of the significance of how you frame something, right?
Yes.
So language can be used in a specific way in order to make something sound, a certain way to people.
Yeah.
So that's something that you see happening a lot with new religions that haven't been around for a long time. Religions like Christianity in its early days, it would have been framed in a certain way to make people afraid of it, to make people not go to it, and we certainly see that was the case in that time period. With the early Christians, they were spoken badly about, they were talked badly about by the Sanhedrin and the elders of that time.
There is an interesting example that comes to my mind. For example, when thinking about this, I was recently researching and writing an article on miracles, and I was also confronted with this concept that actually a miracle is an extraordinary event that is framed within a religious narrative.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you also dispossess from the religious narrative the fact of it, it actually becomes something really interesting, because, for example, take Jesus, peace be upon him, and his claim of destroy this temple and I will rebuild it back in 3 days. Right? And the Bible, what does it say? It says that the temple that he was talking about was the temple of his body. So basically, Jesus, what is he claiming? He's claiming that he's going to rise from the dead. This is how Christians have interpreted it, right? That he was going to be able to rise after his death 3 days after, right? So let's frame it in the without the religious context. It will we could write a headline saying these people are following a man who claims that he can rise even if they kill him. Right? Yeah. So you destroy the religious narrative, you present the idea, and now of course you framed it as a crazy man preaching craziness.
Right. It would change the way that it is viewed, but of course we view these verses through the lens of history and through
theology.
Yeah, exactly. Of theology, exactly. So we sort of view religion in that way. We view it certainly in hindsight, and we view it with the supposition that it is truthful.
Exactly. So that's the thing. So Now, one of the things that I was really thinking about also is about the fact that there is a point that Susan Palmer makes in one of the recent articles in Bitter Winter, the same magazine that Massimo Introvigne posted this article in, and she says that there is a man who died in 2022. He was a sociologist of religion. His name was James Arthur Beckford. Okay, so James Arthur Beckford, he wrote an article called "The Mass Media and New Religious Movements," and James Arthur Beckford is not like a simple sociologist of religion. Like, he was a fellow of the British Academy. He was the president of the Association for the Sociology of Religion, and he was also the president for the International Society for the Sociology of Religion. So this is one of the top scholars in the field of sociology of religion. Like, I doubt you can go really, you can find someone who is
expert in this field.
Yes, more of an expert than him, right? So what did he say in this article? He said that when you have journalists, we assume that their work consists on just reporting on facts, right, from an outside perspective.
You know, I have a slide with this exact point. Okay. Like, we can bring it up and just read it, and then you can continue to speak about it. British sociologist James A. Beckford pointed out that the function of a reporter is to passively reflect the news, to report it from the sidelines, but when cults are involved, he notes, journalists will often take on a proactive role as moral gatekeepers. Yes. And this is in the article that you mentioned, the mass media and new religious movements, and you can find that in the Communications Journal. And it's I think a very, very valid point.
It is a very interesting thing that he says, because he says that when it comes to cults, when it comes to new religious movements, journalists are known, like, there is a history of journalists exceeding their normal duties of a journalist, and he says that they are known for example, going to the judges and instructing them how they should rule in a court case against these prophets, right? Yeah. And he also says that basically they are also have gone so far as to go to law enforcement agents and help them plan raids against religious communities.
That seems very backwards, right? Because journalists actually are supposed to ethically be very detached and objective when they're reporting on something. They're supposed to simply report the facts. But it seems very clear that actually when it comes to reporting on religions, and particularly new religious movements, the experts have observed and they confirm that we find journalists actually playing an active role in creating a narrative, which may or may not be true, which is very alarming and very unethical when it comes to what journalism is supposed to do in the world.
And he says that the journalistic articles, they are able to erode the basic human right to the presumption of innocence.
Wow.
Yes.
I mean,
you're
supposed to be innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
But it looks like the journalism is known in the academic circles. This is a well-known fact in academic circles, that journalists basically are inciting, hatred and a narrative against new religious movements by framing them as cults. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, and unfortunately, we see that when new religions pop up, they're actually easy targets for this type of treatment, right? Because they don't have the benefit of the doubt in people's minds. Yes. People are not familiar with them. People fear the unknown, and we find that this is actually something that is used against new religious movements. And on that note, I wanted to read a verse from the Bible that points out that Jesus, he warned his disciples that they would would face a similar type of hatred. In John chapter 16, verses 2 through 3, they will put you out of the synagogue. In fact, the time is coming when anyone who kills you will think they are offering a service to God. They will do such things because they have not known the Father or me. So we find that this is the same sentiment that people are having in the world today when it comes to new religious movements. They think that they're doing a service, and this is something that Susan Palmer mentions in her article. She also she said that if you consider society as like a garden, people view new religious movements as like weeds, and they want to pluck them out, but in doing so they actually cause harm because you know, they often contain healing properties and benefits, and actually people pluck them out of the garden.
And it is of course, like, what is the reason why? Like the only reason why they are plucking out these new weeds, that they are perceiving them as weeds, is, as she says, because they want to make space for the well-known plants that we have, right? So I think one of the reasons why Abba Sadiq, from him is peace, has been a victim, and the community around him have been victims of these targeted attacks, right, against us, is because Abba Sadiq has a theology that is very new, a theology that is also very critical of mainstream religious movements, right?
I mean, you know, the mainstream religious movement in the time of Jesus was
the Pharisees, the Sadducees,
and who were his number one enemies? Exactly these people. He came out and he said, hey, they're misleading you, everyone. Don't listen to them. They're absolute hypocrites. They're not entering the kingdom, and they're actually stopping you from entering into the kingdom. And so for that reason, we find multiple occasions in the Bible where they're actually plotting to kill him, and the only thing stopping them is the fact that he has some supporters, and they're actually afraid for themselves. But they wanted to kill him, and they wanted to stop his movement throughout the entire 3 years of his ministry.
Until they took him and they brought him to their courts. They created this fake narrative against him,
like insurrection, and they accused him of
and they took him to Pontius Pilate, and they forced Pontius Pilate to rule against him and to declare him like to be condemned to death, right? So we see that basically the story is kind of trying to repeat itself, right?
I mean, we see that this is something that has happened in the history of the true religion of God. So I think it's an important point for people to consider and to take it as a warning and not to take it lightly, because look how easy it was for people to fall into this trap. And the people thought they were doing something good, right? I mean, we spoke about how it was actually the majority of the people in the crowd who voted to hand over Jesus in order to be crucified and free Barabbas. So this is something that the majority of the people were unified on, and they thought that they were doing something good for society. And that's actually very scary when you think about it.
Of course. It's I mean, it is an important reminder for the people. And one of the things that I was also reflecting is that it looks to me that in these articles we see that I don't think this is something new, to be honest with you. It looks also that Susan Palmer, for example, in her article, she quotes what looks to be like a very famous article in Sociology of Religion called The Scientific Study of Religion. You Must Be Joking. I think this is the name of the article.
Yeah, by Eileen Barker.
Yes. So in this article, basically, it is kind of pointed out that sociologists, people who study the religions and who are very well acquainted with a proper understanding, right? Trying to properly understand what the claims are and what the religions consist of, they need to be pushing against this narrative of mainstream media and mainstream society, where it looks like there is a real tension. This is what looks to me, that there is a real tension between journalism right now and sociology.
Yeah, right. I was actually very surprised to learn this, but I found that really enlightening in these articles because they make it clear that the job of sociologists is actually what you would imagine a journalist doing, right? Having some sort of objectivity and just simply observing what is happening and what the beliefs are and how the new religious movement is operating in order to, in an objective way, portray the truth. You would imagine that that's what a journalist is doing, right? But we find that actually the journalists are having an agenda, and the sociologists are trying to hold them off and say, like, wait a second, we want to actually hear what they're saying before you condemn them and before you slander them and make up lies about them.
Yes, because just because, for example, one of the things she says, just because they have been labeled as anything, right? Like, for example, they labeled us as a doomsday cult, which in the article she also says, like,
doesn't make a lot of sense.
Doesn't make sense.
We don't even believe in the end of the world.
Exactly.
Like, we believe in regeneration and
exactly.
rebirth, so
exactly. So it is. But even if we were right, like telling the people that the war is going to finish, and that doesn't mean that we're mistreating anybody. That doesn't mean we're exercising violence against our children or against anyone, right? It doesn't mean that. So she says we are people who are acquainted with not only religions, but we are responsible citizens who are also acquainted with human rights. And we believe that if we have this power, this knowledge to fight against bigotry and against hate and discrimination of people, we there's no reason why we wouldn't do that.
Yes, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it should be noted that Susan Palmer, she actually knows us better than any sort of journalist that has reported on us, because she actually came and she stayed here for 2 weeks, and she
interviewed a lot of people.
She observed over 30 members of the religion. So she has first-hand information and insight as to how it is that we function and what it is that we believe. Whereas most people, they do like cursory research and then they try and publish this as fact.
Yes.
So I think that it's important for people to understand.
And what I was really like reflecting on is that the journey of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light, the journey of the followers of Abdullah Hashem Abba Sadiq began with this series of videos that he was doing, where he, as somebody who studied religion, right?
Yeah, he did comparative religious studies, right?
Exactly. And he was introducing these comparative religious studies to the mainstream, right? Yeah. So he made us aware of how the academia thinks about these things and what are the similarities between religions. So I think, as a member of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light for almost 8 years now myself, I feel that I am way more closer to reading what a sociologist of religion would say about us and anyone than any media, like mass media corporation, right? Because now Abba Sadiq, from him is peace, he has given us an intellectual scaffold in order to be able to even understand what these people, these academics are saying. Whereas if we wouldn't have followed Abba Sadiq, we would have been trapped in a
we would have been trapped in like a matrix. We wouldn't have been able to break out of this way of thinking that was handed down to us. For sure, his work opened the minds of many people,
definitely,
and enlightened many people as to the similarities between different belief systems, and that was important for many people. I think that we were able to follow in his footsteps because much of his journey was actually recorded and published. And so, many people, they followed him step by step on this journey until, he reached the truth. And then we also followed suit. So, that is important. And she mentions in the article this journey that he took.
Yes, exactly.
That it was helpful for people in this way. I have another excerpt from the article of Susan Palmer that I might bring up. It's also mentioning this expert of religion that we had talked about before. Sociologists of religion James A. Beckford and James T. Richardson and Barnes Van Driel have made the important point that journalists have consistently generated stories that trivialize and stigmatize alternative religious movements and tend to craft thumbnail descriptions so as to make the group conform to the standard stereotypical portrait of a cult. Media reports on cults frequently show bias and hasty, inadequate research methods and are shaped by a militant secularism that showcases a group's weirdest beliefs without context or any explanatory framework. Many journalists openly declare their mandate to unmask the cults and their proto-criminal leaders, they will seek out apostates and whistleblowers who are dedicated to broadcasting the bad news about their former religion. So I think that it's important to note that this is actually not something that is new. It's something that has happened, and there is actually a pattern of it happening in the world. And that it's something that is very problematic. And Holly Falk also, she spoke about this issue when it comes to speaking to former members of a faith, because even people who think that they have good intentions, their memory is sort of warped and transformed by the experience. So it is not a good idea to take the testimony of former members as reliable resources when it comes to studying a belief system.
She pointed out that there is also research proving that ex-member accounts tend to be
faulty.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean it's a real problem, and this points out the fact that sociologists, people who are actually studying this, they've come to the conclusion that this is a pattern that has happened.
Yes, exactly. So it is again, if we think about this apparent tension that exists between sociology of religion and journalism, comes from the fact that, sociologists of religions are doing the best they can to interview members of the religions themselves and to know the claims of any new religious movements from inside, from within, and whereas journalism and this anti-cultist journalism is known for going for sensationalist stories from ex-members,
like
and
headlines,
exactly,
and taking beliefs out of context, like we saw, for example, in some articles where people were looking into what we know about cures, medicine of the Mahdi, things that are actually known to cure people, and taking that information and using it in order to ridicule, which doesn't make any sense, because when you compare it to noted medicinal methods, they're no less odd.
Weird.
It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
But we see that that's something that people have done. They try and take what you believe out of context and present it in a way in order for people to mock and ridicule.
And one of the things that this previous slide also points out is that they come always from this militant secularism, right?
Which
is a narrative framework as well, right? We have these beliefs inserted into the theological framework of our religion. They are taking these beliefs and inserting them into this militant secularist way of thinking, which means what? Secularism is this idea that basically society shouldn't be
should be detached from religion.
Exactly. So what does that mean? Essentially, it means that if your religion that you believe in, if you're a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim, was in its early stages and you were a part of it right now, and they existed as well, you would be targeted and attacked in exactly the same way that the Ahmadi religion of peace and light right now is being targeted. For example, they could claim they could take these weird claims that Jesus could cure blindness of the people using his saliva.
Because he did. This is a famous story, and we've spoken about it even recently in our episode that we talked about miracles. He mixed dirt with his saliva. In order to make a paste of mud, and he wiped it on the eyes of an individual, and this cured the individual of blindness. So
that's a weird claim.
To the apparent, especially at the time when he was not accepted as a prophet by many people, it would be an extremely weird claim if you put it in its context. But it happened, and now people praise it and they believe in it. But the difference is that we have this history. It's spread. Christianity has spread as a religion. It had time. And now we look back at these scriptures as like a historical book. But if you imagine the events unfolding in their day and age, it would have looked extremely weird to the people.
Especially if you had people in society telling you, this is a lie. This is something that is the.
And people will find ways to explain away, anything.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, he healed people sometimes by saying, by their faith, and certainly people would find a way to argue against that and try and diminish that and call it not a miracle. But yeah,
definitely.
I mean, I think that we can all agree that religions, every true religion, it begins as being non-conforming. It doesn't conform to the societal norms. It disrupts the status quo, and it's often misunderstood in its early days. I think that's a pattern that we can see throughout the history of true religions.
Exactly. And this is the pattern that emerges in any of the divine religions that we right now consider as part of the tradition of mainstream religion. This is the pattern. They all begin as what they would frame today as these dangerous cults, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you might ask yourself, like, how do we differentiate then? How do we know what differentiates like a true religion from sort of a false religion? And there's an article that you can find on the Divine Just State magazine website. It was in the most recent issue of the Divine Just State, and it's on the topic of cults. And the author, Alia Muhammad, she makes an interesting point. She says that a lot of things can be categorized as a so-called cult in today's day and age, not just religions, but you find, she lists some examples. She lists David Koresh and the Branch Davidians, who are an isolated sect that ended in a tragic confrontation in Waco, Texas. She lists QAnon, a political movement with a messianic figure, coded language, and deep distrust in institutions. I think many people are familiar with QAnon.
Yeah.
And even Swifties, the fans of Taylor Swift, can be classified as a cult
following.
Yeah, she has this like cult following, this very dedicated group of followers who have their own rituals, and they have their own little sort of subsect of society going on. And then if we compare it to Jesus and his disciples, who were a group accused of blasphemy and political rebellion, persecuted for claiming obedience to one man who said he was sent by God, can we really classify these things as the same?
Yeah.
And then she goes on to say that new religious movements versus destructive cults, sociologists categorize fringe groups under a more refined system. So new religious movements are often new, small, and non-mainstream, and they may be based on new revelations or reinterpretations of older ones. And destructive cults are something different, and that's a group that employs coercion. They suppress dissent. They isolate members, and they're built around authoritarian control. And then the third thing is established religions, which we've already gone over, which is they were once rebellious movements that over time became institutions. Mm-hmm. So the idea isn't really the size of the movement, but it's actually the ethics and the structure and the transparency. Yeah. So I think that's important, and it gives us information about what we need to use in order to differentiate between a baby religion, a religion in its infancy, which Susan Palmer speaks about in her article, that this is a thing. Religions all have a beginning, right?
Exactly.
So you can't just diminish something because it is new.
Yeah. So I think it is very important because we are not claiming that there is not been cases in which very predatorial people have used the disguise of religion to manipulate and do a lot of evil to society or to their members, to their followers. There certainly has happened. Mm-hmm. It certainly has happened. What we're saying is that mainstream media is using the word cult in such a loose way right now that you have the Swifties being a cult following, right? Yeah. In the same you're using the same word for the Branch Davidians, right?
It seems like a wildly different category, right?
Definitely.
But they're sort of swept under the same branch, and they're considered to be the same thing. So I think the term itself lacks understanding. It's just sort of a generalization.
Yes, and also if we think about using religion to coerce people into doing evil stuff, established religions, they do have a long history of doing that. The scholars of religion, established religions.
Yes, exactly. People who were not appointed by God.
Exactly.
People who hijacked religion. So we find that in the religions of Christianity, in the religion of Islam, we find that actually the scholars and the people who rose to authoritarian positions within these institutions, they actually did exactly that.
They killed Jesus.
Yeah, it's very alarming.
Yeah,
it's very alarming. So yeah, I think that it gives us a lot to think about, and I think that I think that we could go on in analyzing the movement of Jesus, because this was a new religious movement at some point in time, right? Christianity.
Yes.
And it was one where Jesus, he said things that could be considered highly controversial in today's day and age. He said very clearly that you can't have anything, you can't love anything more than him, right? Like he demanded loyalty, he demanded obedience. He said that if you love me, you'll keep my commands. He said many things that could be considered controversial out of context.
Yes, but at the same time, like the hindsight and theology, like have shown us that right now, when people read the claims of Jesus, they don't find them controversial anymore. They find that pretty much everything that Jesus said has like an example in the Old Testament, right? So he was preaching exactly the same religion, right?
That's true. But Jesus, I mean, maybe it's important that we point out that what differentiates Jesus, from somebody who comes forward and claims falsely, is that Jesus was divinely appointed, and that's what differentiates a true religion of God from anything else. Because a true religion doesn't just exist in a vacuum, like it doesn't come out of nowhere. We find that there's this chain of successorship that somebody is always divinely appointed by their predecessors if they're truly sent forward by God. And I think that that's important for people to know when they're trying to distinguish what is a true religion and what is a false religion.
And another massive difference of Jesus is even when he was claiming that you should obey him if you love him, and if you love God, and you should love him more than you love your family, and all this stuff that basically would frame him today definitely as a cult leader.
If somebody came forward and said these things today, it would be
definitely
controversial. It would be controversial and would be framed in a way that was, defamatory.
Yes, they would they would be like preparing the cross again for Jesus. But the thing is, when we analyze the teachings of Jesus, we can see clearly that everything that he was calling to was goodness, good moral behavior, right? Being decent, good human beings. And I think this is the same thing that you should see in Abba Sadiq, from him is peace. And I think even people who don't agree with us, at least in the Spanish side, I don't know what's your experience in the English side, but in the Spanish side, a lot of people who don't agree with us have said, yes, you are calling to goodness.
Yeah, right? Not only are we calling to goodness, but we're calling to knowledge. And I think that that's something that also distinguishes us from these classifications that you find from sociologists about, so-called cults that are dangerous. They like to censor information. They don't like people to look and seek and to know. But this religion actually calls to the exact opposite of that. And actually, that is one of the hallmarks of this faith. Ahmed al-Hassan, from him his peace, he said that he doesn't call anybody to believe blindly. Actually, he wants people to read and research and to scrutinize, right? And he said, search for your religion until they call you crazy. So it's actually like incumbent upon everybody in our religion to read and research and to not stop seeking knowledge and information.
Definitely.
And Absalik, from him his peace, he said that we can't discard anything. Actually, we have to look at everything, and all scriptures are on the table. So I think that's really important, because we love knowledge and we love seeking that which is true. Yeah,
and anyone out there who is up for knowledge and up for doing good to society, we are also a people who are trying to who want the best for the world.
That's another point that we can close on. We have formed a community, and many people find that to be controversial. But we are like the early Christians that are mentioned in the book of Acts chapter 4. And the reason why we have gathered in order to do this is to create a better world.
Exactly.
Create a society filled with goodness, where people's needs are taken care of and where people are able to live like true Christians. So that is the essence of what we are calling for, and that's why we have gathered together.
And if you're interested in doing good for society, you should reach out. And even if we don't agree to become all members of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light, I'm pretty sure that we can all agree on how to cooperate and collaborate to make the world a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me today, brother.
Thank you, Tiffany.
It's always a pleasure to have you, and I'll see you again next time.
God bless you. Assalamu alaikum.